One of the sure realities of life is death. And although it must knock at all of our doors, we are not prepared for when the reality strikes us. Death is one of those that leaves us dumbfounded, dumbstruck, and often we feel as if the whole world is crashing in. Today we're going to talk about pre-grieving and the processes of how we can support one another when death knocks at our doors. People cope with the loss of a loved one in many ways. For some, the experience may lead to personal growth, and even though it's a difficult and trying time, they can deal with it. But there is no right way of coping with death. The way a person grieves depends on the personality of that person and the relationship with the person who has died. How a person copes with the grief is affected by their experience with cancer or the way the disease progressed, the person's cultural or religious background, coping skills that they might know, the mental history, support systems, and the person's social and financial status as well. So grief is defined as the normal process or reaction when we experience loss. For many people, grief may be when we are dealing with loss of material items, perhaps the end of a relationship, or even when it comes to emotional saying goodbye. What we're dealing with today is the grief and the loss of a loved one by death. And this is very, very traumatizing and cannot be handled well by many people. Often we feel that this is the end, or I did not get time to say my final farewell. And to counteract this challenge, the Cancer Association, through the psychosocial support program, focus on pre-grieving and preparing not only the family but also the person entering the last journey to deal with the imminent death that is on its way. There is a sure difference between bereavement and mourning, and bereavement is the period after a loss during which grief is experienced and mourning occurs. The time spent in a period of bereavement depends on how attached the person was to the person who has died and how much time was spent anticipating the loss. The process of mourning, as we commonly refer to it, is when we start to adapt to the loss. Mourning is also influenced by cultural customs. In some traditions we mourn for a week, in some we mourn for 2 or 3 or several weeks. There are certain rituals, and society's rules for coping with loss is different. What we must remember is that we are a very unique culture and ethnic Namibia, and we all have to stand together and respect those different cultural customs to make the process of mourning better. Although it has been around for centuries, it is one of those hushed terms that we do not speak about, pre-grieving and preparing the family for death. Pre-grieving is the process by which we start to accept that the final journey is coming. Pre-grieving is the process by which we prepare the loved one staying behind, that their loved one is going to the next chapter of their journey. For many patients, when pre-grieving is not part of the final journey, the process of dying becomes very, very difficult. During the process of pre-grieving, we often ask either a psychologist, a social worker, or someone who has dealt with this process to sit with the family and also to guide the family and patient about the processes that is going to occur. When a patient is not prepared for the next chapter, death, we often find that the patient has very difficulty to let go, and this is what we want to try and circumvent with pre-grieving counseling. We want to make it as comfortable and as easy as possible for the patient to transition to the next chapter of their journey. We do this by comforting both the patient and the family. It's very important that we share beautiful memories. So, for instance, we can ask the family to sit with the patient, to recall memories, to perhaps sing their favorite hymn or song, to watch a movie that the family like to watch together. And if we want to cry, it's normal to cry. If we want to laugh, it is perfectly acceptable to laugh. Share some photos, drink some tea, make a favorite last meal together, And most importantly, when you know in your heart it's time to let go, tell the patient who is busy dying that you can carry on without them. Tell them that it is okay to go to the next chapter, to move on. Because very often patients cling on not for their own benefit, but because they feel they cannot let go of their families. Very often we see mothers who cannot let go because they think their children will not be okay, because they think their husbands will not be able to carry on and cope without them. Allow your loved one that final peace and ease to journey on peacefully. The goals of pre-grief counseling include helping the bereaved to accept the impending loss by helping him or her talk about the loss. We help the bereaved to identify and express the feelings related to the impending loss. For example, to understand that there might be anger or guilt, anxiety, helplessness, and even sadness. We focus on helping the bereaved to prepare to live without the person who is busy dying and to make decisions alone. We are going to focus on helping the bereaved to separate emotionally from the person who is entering the last phase of life and guiding to let go of the loved one dying, while subsequently also helping the patient who is departing make peace and peacefully let go. We must understand that there are different methods of coping during the final stages of life and after the process of death itself has occurred. And during pre-grieving, we start dealing with these processes already. With pre-grieving, we also identify problems as well as make recommendations for professional grief therapy, and where possible, we also guide on funeral arrangements and legal matters within the confines and respectable norms. And with all parting journeys, we need to respect and value these two dimensions in order to make the final transition, death, a smooth and more respectable journey. When we look at the spiritual reality, we can always ask if the patient has final words, a final prayer, or want a spiritual leader or healer to come in and be there. When we look at the physical norm, we have to make sure that the person is comfortable and that the patient's body is ready for this transition. Please remember that this is a journey that you need not venture into alone. There are support structures in place, and your medical officer, doctor, your family, the Cancer Association, we are all a family standing together during this time of bereavement. Tears are normal and a natural part of saying goodbye, and you do not need to hide your tears from your loved one or apologize for crying. They may tear up and subtly cry as well as they let go, and tears express your love and help you staying behind to also let go. From here, the grieving and counseling process has to start. It is important to remember that this process will take time, and we are all unique individuals, and we need to embark on this journey individually, and therefore allow yourself to grieve after you have finished the pre-grieving cycle.